Road cycling's history is as compelling as it is scandalous, as heroic as it is villainous, as utterly euphoric as it is resoundingly tragic. It is a sport that is very close to my heart, but I shan't try and bore you about that too much today. Instead, we're going to climb into Flamme Rouge. So let's strap on that lycra, pump up those tyres, and clip into those pedals. It's time to race, baby! Cue the titles! Allez! Flamme Rouge translates to red flag, which in road cycling signifies the final kilometre of a race. Flamme Rouge is set during an era which is very different to contemporary standards. Nowadays, vast amounts of cash are injected into the sport in order to produce the best athletes possible. This game, on an aesthetic and practical level, takes us back to a time when cycling was simpler, when the sport was based on a more basic formula, when it was simply a battle, a brutal battle of survival of the fittest. Flamme Rouge is a game for 2 to 4 players, with each player getting to operate a team of 2 cyclists, a sprinter and a ruler. Movement is going to be governed through the playing of cards, and each cyclist has their own little asymmetric deck. You've got your ruler, who is a cycling all-rounder. They are good at everything, but they don't specialise in one particular skill, so their cards are going to be based around consistency. Contrary to that, you've got your sprinter. These guys are much broader in terms of their range of cards because they specialise in going fast, so they can achieve tremendous speeds. However, they get exhausted that much more easily because they've got to carry that extra muscle mass, particularly going up hills. It's tough for them, they're at a disadvantage, so their decks are counted with a lot slower cards as well. At the beginning of every round, each player is going to select one of their cyclists. They draw 4 cards from their respective decks and then have a little look at them, and they're going to play one of their movement cards face down. The rest of the cards are going to be recycled at the bottom of their deck face up to be used later on in the game. They then repeat the process for the second cyclist, and then once everybody has selected their 2 cards, they flip them over, and then we can move the riders, starting from front to back, with priority going to the person on the right-hand lane if there's any riders side by side. So we move them up, and if any times there's a blockage in the road, you can go past them, provided you have enough movement. However, if you're going to land perfectly on them, then you get stuck behind them, like in a little traffic jam, or you get clogged up because of too much gluten. It's 3 days. It's been 3 days. Once everybody has moved, we're going to apply any slipstreaming. Starting from the back, if a rider is only 1 space away from a rider or pack in front of them, they get to close that gap for absolutely free. It's fantastic. You then work your way up through the field, and you might be able to pull off multiple slipstreams in one turn. It's a jamboree. After you've finished all the slipstreaming, you're then going to start dishing out these cards, the Exhaustion cards. They are given to anyone who's completely out on their own or at the very front of their respective packs. Earn 1 or 2 of these and you should be relatively okay. You can work your way around them. However, the more you earn, the more difficult it is going to be, particularly towards the end of a race when your deck is diminishing that much more and more. You're going to have fewer cards to choose from, and you could end up drawing a whole hand of Exhaustion cards. These mechanisms are simple yet remarkably intelligent reflections of real road cycling. You see, this guy out in the front, he is being buffeted by the wind around him. However, everybody else behind him is getting a much easier ride because he is acting as a bit of an air shield. Everybody else can put in that much less effort than him and still get the same result. So it makes perfect sense here that for slipstreaming you get benefits for it. However, being out the front, you gain those Exhaustion cards. You are hampered because it is that much more strenuous for him to ride the same as everybody else. You also get to contend with ascents and descents. The red sections symbolise going uphill. No matter what card you play in these sections, you can never move more than 5 spaces, nor are you going to be able to get the benefits of any drafting. They don't take place here. Then you have the blue descent sections. If you start your turn in this section, then you are always going to move a minimum of 5 spaces. So what you can try to do is you can try to land your rider in these sections so that on your next turn you might be able to use up one of your weaker cards, or even better, get rid of an exhaustion card. After each turn, players discard the cards that they have played, banishing them forever, never to be seen again. So over the course of a race, your deck is going to get smaller and smaller, a deck dwindler, if you will, rather than say a deck builder. Your resources are going to become increasingly sparse, reducing your options, making you have barely any cards left at the end of the game. The winner is going to be the first person who crosses the finish line, or if multiple riders cross that line on the same turn, then it is whoever finishes furthest past the line will be victorious! Racing games as a category tend to have widespread appeal because they are easy to learn and fun to play. Flamme Rouge is no exception. You can teach this game in about the same time it takes to set everything up. It's wonderfully tactile, moving your pieces, and even setting up the maps. You can create your own with the jigsaw style-like pieces. Games of Flamme Rouge as well often go right down to the wire, which is brilliant, and I'll explain why that is so good for this game shortly. Aesthetically as well, it is wonderful. It is gloriously nostalgic and reminiscent of one of my favourite films, Les Triplettes de Belleville. The problem with some games, and this isn't exclusive to racing games alone, is that after a few turns you can kind of forecast the results. You can see who is going to win, and if you're in a particularly bad position at the start, you just want the game to end, but instead you just have to endure the pain wanting to be put out of your misery. This game negates that in a number of ways to guarantee that your gaming experience is always going to be enjoyable, it's going to be close, and even if you lose, it doesn't feel frustrating or disappointing or rage-inducing. Firstly, it's the fact that you control a team of 2 riders, so if one of them falls far behind, then so be it. You can try and spend some cards to get them back, but it doesn't matter too much. You can focus your attention on your other rider. The fact as well that you have 2 riders to control adds a little bit of depth of strategy to the game, because ideally you want to be able to play your cards and let one of your guys get exhausted whilst the other gets a free ride, gets protected all along the way. However, with the gameplay, that's not always a guarantee. It's more of a calculated risk. Alternatively, you can try to get your riders to protect each other so that if one of them does seriously struggle, then you've got your other guy as a backup little contingency. It basically equates to having a second chance. If something goes disastrously wrong in this game, you always have a little backup. It's not the end of the world. Another reason why races are often tight are down to the decks themselves. They provide an illusion that the races are much closer than they actually are. You see, everybody gets the same deck, with just enough cards to get them past the finish line. So everybody's going to be spending the exact same cards and getting themselves to the finish at, well, exactly the same time. They're completely balanced. So it's going to be those fine margins that play a huge factor in determining the winner. You see, getting lots of exhaustion cards are going to put you in a weaker position, statistically speaking, because probability-wise, you're going to be drawing a hand of cards that have multiple ones in them, thus reducing your options. Then you have slipstreaming and spending weaker cards on descents. These play a huge part. The more free spaces of movement you earn, the better, because these can be the difference between victory and defeat. So often a race will be decided simply by the difference of 1 space. This is fantastic because you get a crescendo of tension right up to the climax of the race. You feel that anyone at the table could win, and if you lose, you don't feel abject because everyone is pretty much always guaranteed a reasonable chance at victory. So if earning slipstream points are the key to victory, then this creates a wonderful psychological drama between the players. Yes, you can spend all your fastest cars right at the start, building a sizable lead. It looks good, but it is terrible because your deck is then going to be littered with nothing but exhaustion cards, and as you get to the end of the race, you're just going to be running out of juice as everybody else just breezes past you. So, you have got to play with the intention of earning these slipstream points. But so does everyone else. You might be at the front of the pack having just earned yourself an exhaustion card, so on your next turn you play a nice low card with the intention that other riders are going to overtake you, but you can hide protected in the pack. Only upon everybody revealing their cards that they themselves have all played really low cards as well, and all they do is move up behind you and oh bother, you've earned yourself another exhaustion card. Take into account the other factor, you play a nice low card, but everybody else has played a really high card. They all breeze past you, they leave you for bed or dead behind. You've got a sizable gap that you're on your own, you earned an exhaustion card, and you're going to have to spend one of your more valuable cards on your next turn to try to negate that negative effect and catch up with the group. It's a wonderful little mix of bluffing, playing conservatively, or taking those risks. It's a great little psychological game which actually reflects the professional sport as well. There are a couple of little issues that I have with this game, mainly focusing around the cyclists themselves. Firstly, the decks. The artwork is really gorgeous. However, the differences between the sprinter and rouleur decks are a little bit too subtle for me, and sometimes players can get in a little muddle sorting them out. Secondly, we have the moulds. Yes, you can tell them apart by their S and the R on the back of them, but they are printed very, very small. Also, from a cycling perspective, I think they got the moulds the wrong way round. You see, the sprinter is the one that's standing up on their pedals, and for me that should be the rouleur. They're the ones that are good at climbing up hills. They're going to be the ones that can dance on their pedals. And the sprinter should be adopting the low down position. Firstly, from that sprinting perspective, they've got to hunch over, get down low to maximise their power when they are sprinting. Also, they struggle considerably more going on the ascents. They're going to be hunched over their handlebars rather than stood up on their pedals dancing their way up. In summation, Flamme Rouge is a fantastic game. It is a racing game that belongs in pretty much anyone's collection. It plays best with the more people you have, so if there's only the two of you, I would play something else, to be honest. However, I like this game on a number of personal reasons, not just with my own affiliations towards cycling, nor that it is a pretty decent microcosm of the sport. But on a family note, this is a game that my parents enjoy as well. There aren't many games out there that bring my parents to the table, and for that this holds a special place. I'm going to absolutely cherish it, and it is one that gives me that quality time with my family. Thanks very much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please hit that subscribe button down there in the corner. You can reach me on social media via my Facebook and Instagram pages. That was Flamme Rouge. What are your favourite racing games, and do you have any games that are particularly close to your heart? Please let me know in the comments. Anyway, thanks very much for watching, happy gaming, and cheerio. And apologies for all the tight lycra.